You already know the voice in your head isn't fair. It brings up the same mistake before you've even finished your coffee. It compares you to people who seem to have it figured out. You tell yourself you should be past this by now. You're not. You know the voice is exaggerating. You listen to it anyway. And somewhere along the way, you stopped questioning if it was even telling the truth. It talks over you before you're even fully awake. By the time you notice, the day already feels heavier than it needs to be. And you're not making this up. That inner voice can get loud enough to feel like the truth about who you are. Buddhism has been studying this exact pattern for over 2,000 years. And what it found might change how you see that voice today. That voice feels like it's always been part of you. Like it showed up first, before anything else did. Like there was never a version of you it wasn't already narrating. Here's the thing about that voice. It isn't actually you. Buddhist teaching describes something called citta. That's simply the mind in its natural state, before anything gets added to it. And it says, citta is naturally clear, naturally warm toward itself. Not the harsh voice running through your head right now. Think about it this way. A window can get covered in dust. The glass underneath doesn't stop being clear. It just stops looking clear. The dust is doing the work, not the glass. That's closer to what's happening with you than you'd think. The criticism you carry isn't proof of who you are. It's something that settled on top of who you are. And it settled there for reasons that had nothing to do with your worth. Consider where that voice actually came from. Nobody is born hating themselves. A toddler doesn't wake up ashamed of existing. That voice was built, piece by piece, moment by moment, mostly by things that happened to you, not because of you. A comment that landed wrong when you were young. A comparison you never asked for. A moment where love felt conditional on being good enough. A room where you learned that mistakes cost more than they should have. None of that was your fault, but your mind kept all of it anyway, because that's what minds do with pain. They hold on to it, hoping that if they study it enough, it won't happen again. Sometimes the voice isn't even originally yours. Listen closely to the exact words it uses next time it starts. Notice the phrasing, the tone, the specific things it chooses to bring up. For a lot of people, it sounds suspiciously like someone else's voice from a long time ago, borrowed and never returned. A parent who was under more pressure than they knew how to carry. A teacher who mistook fear for discipline. Someone who never learned to separate a mistake from a person and passed that confusion straight to you. You didn't choose to memorize that voice. You were young, and young minds absorb whatever's around them, the way skin soaks up sun, whether it wants to or not. It made sense as a survival strategy at the time. Keeping that voice close felt safer than risking what might happen, if you let it go. But you're not in that room anymore. The strategy outlived the situation it was built for by a long time. And a strategy that outlives its situation isn't wisdom. It's just old dust, still sitting there out of habit. And you know this feeling, the one where you're doing everything right, and it still doesn't feel like enough. If this is landing for you, there's more of this waiting on the channel. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Look at how it shows up in an ordinary week. You finish a project, and instead of relief, you scan it for what's wrong with it. You get a compliment, and your first move is to explain it away. You say sorry for things that were never your fault to begin with. You succeed at something, and some part of you waits for it to fall apart. You replay a conversation from 3 days ago, still finding new ways to feel bad about it. None of that is who you actually are. That's the dust, doing what dust does, settling on every surface it can find. Watch how it shows up around other people too. Someone offers you help and you insist you're fine. even when you're not. Someone tells you they care about you, and part of you waits for the moment they take it back. You give more in relationships than you ask for, because asking feels like proof you're too much. That pattern didn't start as a choice. It started as protection, built by a younger version of you who learned that needing things came with a cost. The dust settled there for a reason. It just never got the message that the reason is over now. Notice what happens when someone compliments you directly to your face with nowhere to hide from it. Your first instinct is rarely just to say thank you. It's to deflect, correct them, point out the thing they got wrong about you, as if agreeing with something kind someone said about you would somehow be dishonest. That reflex isn't modesty either. It's the dust again, making sure nothing good sticks to the glass for too long. Because if you let the compliment land, you'd have to consider it might actually be true. And that's a harder thing to sit with than most people expect. Here's what that means for you right now. The voice you've been treating as your identity is actually a habit, a very old one. But a habit, not a fact. Buddhism has a word for this too, kilesa. It means the mental residue that covers the mind, the way dust covers glass. Kilesa isn't who you are. It's what accumulated while you were just trying to get through things. And this is why the voice feels so permanent. Kilesa doesn't ask permission before it settles in. It builds slowly, quietly, one small moment at a time. By the time you notice it, it feels like it was always there. It doesn't announce itself as a habit either. It shows up dressed as honesty, as standards, as just being realistic about yourself. That's exactly how it manages to stay so long without ever being questioned. It also shows up dressed as motivation. You tell yourself the criticism is what keeps you working hard, what keeps you from getting lazy or complacent. So you keep it around on purpose, thinking it's doing you a favor. But fear dressed as motivation still runs on fear. And fear is exhausting to live inside of every single day. Notice how much of your effort actually comes from trying to outrun the voice, rather than move towards something you want. Finishing a task early so nobody can call you slow. Over-preparing for a conversation so nobody can catch you off guard. Saying yes to everything so nobody has a reason to be disappointed in you. That's not ambition. That's kilesa, wearing ambition's clothes, keeping you moving so it never has to be questioned directly. You can want to do well without needing to outrun a voice that hates you if you don't succeed. Those are two completely different engines, even though they can look identical from the outside. Perfectionism runs on the same fuel. It tells you if you just get everything right, the criticism will finally stop. It never stops, because that was never the actual deal it was offering. The goalpost moves every time you get close enough to touch it. You hit the mark you set, and the mark quietly moves further out before you even get to enjoy reaching it. That's how you know it isn't really about the task in front of you. It's about trying to control something that was never controllable in the first place, whether you're enough. And you already are, underneath the version of you that's been managing that fear for years. Notice what happens right after something actually goes well. You get the promotion, and instead of celebrating, you brace for the moment they realize you don't belong there. You have a good week, and some part of you starts waiting for it to even out with a bad one. You let yourself feel proud for exactly one evening before the voice reminds you not to get used to it. That's not humility. That's kilesa protecting itself, because if you stayed proud too long, you might stop needing it around. The dust has a job. Its job is to keep explaining why the good things won't last. There's a difference worth naming here. Guilt says you did something that didn't match your values, and it points you toward fixing it. Shame says you were the thing that's wrong, and it doesn't point anywhere at all. Most of what that inner voice runs on is shame wearing guilt's clothing. Guilt can actually be useful. It's chitta, noticing a gap between your actions and your own values, asking you to close it. Shame isn't useful. It's just dust, repeating itself, offering nothing you can actually do with it. Once you can hear the difference, the voice starts losing some of its authority. Not all of it, but enough that you stop treating every uncomfortable thought as a verdict on your worth. There's one more way to test whether the voice is telling you the truth. Picture someone you actually care about coming to you with the exact mistake you just made. You wouldn't list every flaw they've ever had. You'd probably tell them it's okay, that everyone messes this up sometimes, that it doesn't define them. That response already lives inside you. You use it constantly, just never toward yourself. Buddhist teaching has a word for that response too: metta. Metta simply means warmth directed at a living being without needing them to earn it first. You already know how to generate it. You do it for friends, for strangers even, for people you've known for 5 minutes. The only place it seems to run out is the one direction it never learned to point, back at you. That's not because you deserve less of it. It's because Kilesa built a rule a long time ago that metta doesn't apply to you the same way it applies to everyone else. That rule was never true. It just never got challenged, because nobody challenges a rule they don't remember agreeing to. The same warmth you hand out freely to almost anyone else is still there, still yours, still capable of reaching you too. It's just been sitting under the same dust as everything else. There's a teaching that goes back to some of the earliest Buddhist texts. This mind, monks, is luminous, but it is defiled by things that come from outside it. Sit with that for a second. Luminous. Not broken, not flawed at the core, covered. That distinction matters more than it sounds like it should, because a broken thing needs to be fixed. A covered thing just needs to be uncovered, and uncovering is a completely different kind of work than fixing. Fixing assumes something is wrong with you. Uncovering assumes something was never actually damaged, just hidden for a while. That single shift changes what the work even feels like. You're not repairing a flaw, you're clearing a surface that was clear all along. Buddhist teaching has another image for this same idea. Picture the sun on a cloudy day. You can't see it, but nobody assumes it stopped existing. Everyone just says the sky is cloudy today, not that the sun is gone. Nobody looks at an overcast morning and calls the sun broken. They wait, because they already know it's still there, doing exactly what it always does. Nobody tells the sun to try harder to break through, or blames it for the clouds sitting in front of it. That's the trust you're missing when it comes to your own mind. You've been calling the clouds your identity instead of just calling them clouds, and the grip of this is already loosening, even if you can't fully feel it yet. Each time you catch the voice mid-sentence, something shifts. Not because you argued it into silence, but because you noticed it was there at all. Noticing is the first crack in the dust. You don't have to win an argument with your own mind to change this. You just have to remember there's glass underneath the dust in the first place. And that's where it gets harder, because remembering doesn't happen once and stay. It has to happen again and again, especially on the days the voice gets loud. Think about the moments you've already had, whether you named them or not. A morning where you looked at yourself and, just for a second, felt something closer to ease than judgment. A moment holding a pet, or a child, or someone you love, where your mind went quiet enough that the criticism had nowhere to land. A time you forgave someone else instantly without needing them to earn it first, while you still make yourself earn your own forgiveness every single day. A stretch of time so absorbed in something you enjoyed that the voice simply had nothing to say. Those weren't random. Those were citta, showing through the dust for a second. Proof that it never actually left. It was just covered. Over time, you'll find those moments get slightly longer. Not because the dust disappears all at once, but because you start recognizing it faster each time it shows up. There's a well-known line from the Dhammapada, one of the oldest collections of the Buddha's teachings. All that we are is the result of what we have thought. Read that again. Slower this time. If your thoughts built the voice, your thoughts can also stop feeding it. Not by force, by attention, by noticing the dust without mistaking it for the glass. Consider what it actually looks like in a normal day. You make a mistake at work. The old pattern says you're careless. You're not cut out for this. You should have known better. The remembering pattern says a mistake happened, and mistakes happen to people who are still learning, which is every person alive. Same event, completely different mind touching it. One is kilesa talking, the other is citta, a little less covered than it was yesterday. Try it with something smaller. You trip walking into a room full of people. The old pattern spends the next hour replaying it. Sure, everyone noticed and judged you for it. The remembering pattern lets it be a body moving through space, nothing more. Gone in seconds for everyone except you. The event never changes. Only which voice gets to narrate it changes, and you get to notice which one is talking every single time it happens. Try it one more time with something almost everyone recognizes. You scroll through other people's lives for 10 minutes before bed. The old pattern turns that into evidence, proof that everyone else is further along, happier, more put together than you. The remembering pattern notices you're looking at 10 seconds of someone's best moment and calling it their whole life. 10 minutes of scrolling shouldn't be able to decide how you feel about your entire existence. But it does, almost every night, for almost everyone. Because the dust doesn't need much to work with. It just needs an opening, and comparison is one of its favourite ones. Here's what changes once you can see that clearly. You stop mistaking a highlight reel for a scoreboard. You start remembering that the glass under your own dust was never actually behind anyone else's. It was just covered by a different amount of it on a different day. This is what remembering actually looks like most of the time. It's small. It's not a lightning bolt moment where the voice disappears forever. It's noticing you're about to skip a meal to punish yourself for something small and eating anyway. It's catching the apology forming for taking up space and letting the sentence just stay unsaid. It's resting when you're tired instead of finding one more thing to prove first. It's answering the phone from someone who loves you instead of assuming they're calling to point something out. None of that looks dramatic from the outside. It rarely feels dramatic from the inside either. But each one of those moments is a small patch of glass showing through, on purpose this time, not by accident. You don't need a single breakthrough to change this. You need 100 small ones, most of which you'll barely notice happening. That's not a disappointing version of the process. That's what it actually looks like for almost everyone who's ever done it. Think about the first 30 seconds of your morning, the ones right after you catch your reflection. For a lot of people, that's when the voice gets its first word in for the day, before coffee, before anything's even happened yet. It scans for what's wrong before it's even fully light outside. That moment is worth watching closely, because it sets the tone the voice uses for everything else that follows. If the first thing your mind does is search for a flaw, the rest of the day gets built on top of that search. You don't have to fix the reflection to change this. You just have to notice the search happening and let it pass without agreeing to it. Some mornings, that's all remembering looks like. Catching the scam, not arguing with it, not even correcting it, just noticing it's running again like it always does. That noticing alone is enough to keep the glass from disappearing completely under one more layer of dust. But here's what nobody tells you about this. Remembering isn't the finish line either. There isn't a version of you who wakes up one day fully uncovered and never hears the voice again. Even people who've studied this for decades still catch dust settling back in. The goal was never to erase the voice completely. The goal is to stop believing it's the whole truth about you. That difference alone changes everything about how the day feels. It doesn't mean the criticism disappears overnight. It means you start meeting it differently. Less like a verdict, more like weather passing through. Weather doesn't need you to fight it. It just needs you to notice it's passing, not staying. The voice works the same way once you stop treating it as something permanent. You'll still have days it pours. Days the voice shows up, loud, early, and unreasonable, for no clear reason at all. That doesn't undo any of this. It just means today has more clouds in it than yesterday did. Nothing more permanent than that. And that's okay. You're not behind. You're not doing this wrong, because the voice still shows up sometimes. You're doing this exactly right if you're starting to notice it instead of living inside it. That noticing is the whole practice. Not becoming someone new. Remembering someone that was always there, underneath everything that got added on top. So here's where this actually lands. You were never the voice. You were the glass it settled on. Clear before the dust, clear underneath it, clear the entire time it was covered. Nothing that happened to you ever changed what was underneath. Only what was sitting on top of it. You don't hate yourself. You forgot what was there before the noise started. And forgetting isn't permanent. Remembering already started the moment you kept watching this. Maybe it started years ago. In a moment you didn't even mark as important at the time. Maybe it's starting right now. In whatever quiet way this landed for you. Either way, it doesn't need a dramatic beginning to be real. It just needs to keep happening a little more often than it used to. If today is about the voice that never runs out of things to say, there's another side to this too. The version where your mind goes completely quiet and numb instead of loud and critical. That's a different kind of covering, and it's worth looking at as well. Whatever today brought you, you don't have to carry it alone tonight. Let the glass be a little more visible than it was this morning, even if only for a moment. This channel exists to help you see what's actually happening inside your own mind. If that's what you're looking for, subscribe.